I'm very excited to get to talk today with the actors and creators of these films. As you saw from the clip, first up, a look inside Patsy and Loretta, based on the true story of the friendship between music icons Patsy Cline and Loretta Lynn. Our four panelists today: Meron, executive producer; Callie Khouri, director and executive producer; Hilty, who plays Patsy Cline; and Jessie Mueller, who plays Loretta Lynn. First, let me just ask, how does the legend of Patsy and Loretta endure, and do younger people know it? Because, you know, Loretta just wrote a book about it, and of course it's been portrayed in films in the past, and I think for generations the fact that this friendship existed has intrigued people, but it may come as news to people. So are you sort of playing on an existing fascination, or sort of letting people know about this friendship for the first time, do you think?
Callie, why don't you take it?
Okay. You know, I knew that it existed, just as you say, from past movies where it's intimated, but it's never been the focus of a story that I ever saw. And so, you know, I just, as you know, love telling stories about women, and women in music is my kind of favorite thing. So it just seemed like a great opportunity to talk in depth about this friendship that had such a profound effect on both of them, and, you know, kind of reawaken the Patsy Cline legend a little bit, because she has one of the most incredible voices that's ever been recorded, and Loretta Lynn is still doing it, you know. So I just wanted to be part of getting that story out there.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you and Neil a little bit about the development, just because Callie, obviously the script was an all in the family situation. And I would think that, you know, as someone who sort of became legendary as a screenwriter before you were a director, that anyone who's bringing a script to you might feel a little intimidated. Like, you know, how do I bring my own screenplay to Callie Khouri? And then it's somebody in the family doing it. So were you developing it with Angelina Burnett? Or?
She had been developing it for a while, and she, you know, we would talk about it. And then after she finished, she said, you know, I think this has a good chance of getting made, and I'd like to submit you as a director. If you read the script and like it, you know, give me the go ahead, because I think you'd be great for it. And I read it and loved it. I mean, it was so exciting. And we had made some minor changes, but she's such a great writer that, you know, I think that she's had enough experience that she's not intimidated by anybody. And she's just very open too. You know, she's always ready to do some work and very collaborative. And we had written other things together before, so it was just a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit.
And Neil,
go ahead, Chris.
Oh yeah, I just wanted your thoughts on the development.
You know, Lifetime had approached me about whether or not I'd be interested in telling this story. And Mark Nicholson, who is the co-EP who works with me, he canvassed and thought that Angelina might respond to it, Angelina Burnett. And we worked with her and developed the script. And as Callie said, one day she said, what about Callie Khouri as a director? And we thought that was like a dream name, that we'd never get Callie Khouri. And then she said, well, she's already read the script and likes it. And we couldn't think of anybody better. So once we had that terrific script, the rest was relatively kind of kismet for all of these people to come together.
Yeah. Now, you've done so many TV musicals. Oh,
I was going to just say, and of course, we hit the jackpot with our cast.
Oh, yeah.
So once that happened, we were just beyond excited.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going next, of course, because you can't get the casting wrong on a movie like this. Two such iconic figures. Were you thinking specifically of them, or was it kind of a case of we need to look into the world of musical theater to just know that we're getting somebody who has the musical chops to pull this off?
Well, my go-to, and I bet you're not surprised to hear this, is when it comes to casting, I always try and go to musical theater because I think that there is kind of a prejudice against musical theater actors per se, that they can only do musical theater and they're not really skilled actors of depth. And I always like to think the opposite, is that when you do musical theater, you go really deep and on so many levels. So when we're dealing with two musical icons, it seemed like a natural place to go. And we did hit the jackpot, Callie said, with Megan and Jessie.
And I can ask you, all of you, but maybe you first, Neil, in terms of letting the musical numbers play out. That's something you're doing in a Hairspray, obviously, but not necessarily in a musical biopic. So for all of you, how did you feel about the need, if it was, to let everything play out so long musically?
Well, I'm thrilled that the script and especially Callie understands the needs of music in a movie. So we had such great music. And, you know, we did have to play a little bit fast and loose with how long musical songs played out, because we only have a limited amount of time in which to tell the story. So it's that balance in terms of musical numbers and storytelling. And I think Callie calibrated it beautifully.
Yeah.
It's tough
for Megan,
2 minutes and 30 seconds sometimes, but if you could cut the song in such a way as that you don't feel like you're missing part of it, and it's still doing the job of the song, then you've succeeded. And that's what we tried very much to do with this.
Yeah. Megan and Jessie, when this project was brought to you, was it a case of course, I'm an actress, this is what I do, I can nail this? Or were there any thoughts of their past betrayals, but even more than that, there's just the fact that Patsy and Loretta are incredibly popular. They're not really out of anybody's memory. Everybody remembers exactly what they look like and sound like. And that's hard to live up to. So was there trepidation or just full force rush in, this will be great?
I was definitely in the trepidation camp. I had a call. Do you remember Neil and Callie? I had a call with them. They were very gracious. I sort of called and said, "Hi, I'm confused. I don't really know why you want me to do this. I don't have a vast knowledge of Miss Loretta Lynn. I don't really play the guitar. I sing a little. I talk a little. I act a little, but I'm confused. I'm not quite sure why I was the choice." And I'm so grateful. But so we had a discussion about it because I really didn't feel like it was in my wheelhouse. I think there were certain parts that I felt very drawn to, but there were certain parts that were that really made me very scared of taking on the project. So it was a little bit of it took me some time to come around and feel like I maybe had the tool belt to take it on. And then it was the process of actually doing the project that I think unlocked a lot of that for me. And thanks to Callie and Neil, I did say yes. And Megan and I had actually never worked together. We'd met each other a couple times in social situations and like backstage at things. But so just to me, a huge part of it coming together was just figuring out the chemistry between us. And as we became friends on the project, I think it was kind of art imitating life or life imitating art. It was kind of a cyclical thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure any Broadway producers who were seeing the finale where you sing together was trying to figure out, okay, how do we get these two actually on a stage together? So hopefully we can look forward to that someday.
Including Neil, yes.
Yeah, there might be
and we talked about
there might be a raise down there.
Haven't hit it yet. But Megan, you know, I've had the pleasure of working with you before on a TV show called Smash. So I kind of knew what Megan was capable of, and it's a gigantic range, and she didn't disappoint.
Thanks, Neil.
Well, it's all true.
And Megan, and Megan, any thoughts from you about how ready you were to rush into this?
Well, what I was going to say before was that at no point did I ever think that I was going to nail it, that I was perfect for it, that I was even relatively right for it. But it was that monumental challenge that was so attractive, and really the story that was what pulled me into it. So rarely do we get to see stories that feature two artists who are women that love and support each other. So often the narrative is the opposite, that we're painted as people who are in constant competition and tearing each other down. So I was really excited to be a part of something that told a story that that I feel is very true. It's very similar to the relationships I have in my life. And of course, the people attached to the film were, I was dying to work with all of them. And Neil, again, I was so excited to work with, and to get to sing this incredible music. Again, knowing that I am not Patsy Cline, and I am not an imitator by trade. That's not what I do. But what I did know is that I could do my best, given the amount of information I had about Patsy Cline, and bring myself to it as well. I feel like there's a balancing act there in playing someone who's a real person. So I felt like I could at least give it a good shot, and that it was going to be fun, and I was going to be a part of something that was going to promote a storyline that I believed in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how much of it was about, obviously there's the star appeal, the legend appeal, but, at the core, it's a story of female friendship and also mentorship. And how easy is that today? I think, certainly, there are a million stories of women in show business bonding, but then oftentimes they're often placed in competition, especially when there are fewer slots. And I think that's what people talk about in country music today, which maybe is not that different from the early 1960s in certain ways, is that, there's a lot of competition that people are maybe artificially forced into, and then they have to find a way to support each other or mentor each other, and not worry about those outside forces. So it's a pretty contemporary story, basically, I guess is what I'm saying. Were you looking to draw kind of parallels between the early 60s and how much things have or haven't changed in terms of specifically women in country or show business in general?
I don't know, Callie and Neil, what would you say about that? I would, yeah.
Well, I think, going back just to what you said a minute ago about how the stories we're used to seeing are the competitive stories of being so few slots. And it's certainly true in country music that certainly country radio has not afforded women that platform, and kind of just, relegated them to the sidelines when it comes to country radio. But country music is full of women who are supporting the hell out of each other. If you look at groups like the Pistol Annies or the High Women and stuff like that, it's like now more than ever, women in country music and really in all forms of music are realizing that they have, strength in numbers, and they're incredibly supportive of each other. And, certainly in Nashville, we who live here all know that to be true. I mean, the artists here all show up for each other, but the women artists are really forging a place for themselves where, no one has stepped out and been like the Trisha Yearwoods and the people that were having Faith Hills and all of that were having big radio success. There isn't anybody of that stature that you can point to right now that has that gigantic, with the exception of maybe somebody like Carrie Underwood, who's
yeah,
by other appearances and stuff like that. But it's like the big radio presence and the gigantic, stadium size shows the women are able to get closer to that when they do it together. And so I just feel like, this was something Patsy Cline realized early on, that these women were going to have to be there for each other. They were going to have to root for each other and support each other. And, she could have looked at Loretta Lynn the way some of the women artists did, which was, who's this interloper? And, they really gave her a hard time when she first came to Nashville, because there were really very few slots at the time. And Patsy was having none of it. So yeah. I don't know. I just think it's a timeless story in that way, because I think women have always, even though it might not sound as dramatic as two women clawing each other's eyes out to get to the top, I mean, it's a much more true representation of how things have worked.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
The underwear's changed a lot. I will tell you that. I remember that from film.
And in terms of the emotional arcs, oh yeah, the two characters share so many things in common. They're dealing with men who, at the time, people might have said sparks fly in their marriages. Now we can probably actually use the word abusive and feel safe with that. And in other ways, they're very different. One's starting at the top, one's a newcomer, and then emotionally, they're kind of on opposite paths. Like Loretta starts off being pretty meek, and Patsy starts off being a tough gal, and then we see the opposite sides of both of them eventually. So, how much did you want to play off like the common experience of two women fighting with each other against the system, but also really differentiate them as characters?
Well, I think they were very differentiated just as people. And I think Angelina, who we've been talking about, who wrote the script, that was in the script. I think like you said, the way the film was crafted, you really see a certain side of each of these women in the beginning, and then you really see a path of growth, and you see that growth start to begin when they meet each other, because I think they notice things in each other's personality that they admire, and then that helps the other person helps to sort of bring out that admired quality in the person who is sort of watching and observing this. So that was one of the things I really loved about the script, and I resonate deeply with that. I do that a lot with my women friends, and I think the women friends I have in my life, that's why I have them, because they are different from me, and they have qualities that I admire and qualities that I either want to learn from or grow in my own life.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. This is a really fascinating story, and I'm glad it got a chance to play out in full instead of just being a segment in the middle of something else. So thank you so much for being with us. I want to thank our panels and our virtual attendees. We appreciate you sharing your time with Variety's virtual TV festival.